Welcome to the Queen Trail Podcast.
There are three different types of radiation: alpha, beta, and gamma.
What does this technology do? It's like, well, what can you do with electricity?
I just survived 30 years HIV positive. I'm certainly not going to let a little thing like a brain tumor derail me.
When I got to 29 pounds, I was so tired, I just collapsed.
Everything always goes back to being grounded and centered.
It's a mecca for cycling, for sure.
Struggle is the neutralizing force.
And I said, there it is. This is the right family. I got like cold chills.
It's one lone oak tree right in the middle of the trail. It's beautiful.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you've had a great week since the last time that we got together. I'm going to go ahead and get right into this episode of In the Company of Friends with my good friend, Walter McKinley Lewis. It is a remarkable story, daring, rugged, inspiring, not only of survival, hard work, and perseverance, but also of courage and thriving success. It's filled with adventure from the get-go, escaping the segregation of Bunkie, Louisiana, a place that remains mostly segregated today, to become platoon leader in boot camp and continuing to follow his passion as corpsman in the Coast Guard, where he became a helicopter SARs medic, as well as a doctor on the ice cutter Glacier, which traveled to Antarctica 3 times and stopped at some of the world's most amazing ports. And there were sports. Football on the ice at 0 degrees, softball in New Zealand, and a thrilling basketball game in Fiji that you just have to hear to believe. Walter ranked out in the Coast Guard and retired after 28 years, but his adventures and insatiable zest for life continue. Before we get into this episode, please be aware that it carries a warning for historical recounting of the tragedy in Vietnam, in which Walter opens up about a friend's death. It is hard to listen to and maybe triggering to some, but it is a historical document, so please be aware of the subject matter. If you're ready to listen, please grab a cuppa and join me on this inspiring adventure.
But that movie was made exactly where I was born. It was filmed in Cheneyville and Bunkie, in that area.
Wow, I'm definitely going to have to watch it. 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah, you watched 12 Years.
The setting is Bunkie then.
Yeah, it is Bunkie, Cheneyville, in that area. And when I watched that movie, I was so surprised. Well, I know somebody had told me about it, but I was watching the movie and I could see places that I like, yeah, that's Bunkie, But I wasn't surprised, at the movie. But I could only watch it once,
To be honest, I didn't watch it because I don't like having my heart broken.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you don't like seeing that kind of stuff.
I don't.
But it's reality, and it's basically where I come from, Mm-hmm. And like I say, I've seen the changes, and it's been good. We got a long ways to go, but I've seen the changes. So, hey. Although Bunkie hasn't changed that much, but now it made me realize, wow, how did I come out of that environment and survive? Especially with the way I am now. But it was something. A lot of people often wonder, like, God, Walter, because I tell them things, about it. They're like, are you kidding? I was like, no, I'm not kidding. Yeah, but if you get a chance, you have to watch it, see, how it is. So I know you put out a lot of good stuff. I read your, things that you, thoughts that you put out, and they're really good.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that we really need to stop looking at color and start looking. Yeah, I know.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Yeah. Because like I say, I did my part because think about it. I come from a segregated atmosphere, fought whites all my life, and fall in love and marry a white woman in the 60s, late 60s. Well, actually 70s. Think about it. So, yeah, I got tired of hating and having all this hate inside you, so.
What was it like growing up? Well, first of all, tell me about your parents, because I know your dad was a really hard worker, having to work in the segregated South.
Yeah. And my mom's father owned a farm that was passed down to him. His name was Bud Hill, by his father who was white. His father was white. They used to call him the old Irishman. So my grandfather was part white. And when my great grandfather died, he passed the farm down to my grandfather. He was one of the only black people that owned a farm, and he was from a little place called Cottonport, because cotton was king then. Cotton was the main thing. Everybody grew cotton back there. But that was my grandfather.
Now, was that unusual for a black man to inherit from a white father?
Yeah, that was unusual. Yeah, yeah. And the only reason my grandfather did was because I guess his father was, like I say, was Irishman, and he was rough, and he raised his son to be rough. My grandfather was like Ben Cartwright from the Ponderosa. That's the kind of guy he was. He didn't take no crap because we were small. He raised cotton and watermelon, and we had to go out on the farm to help him. I used to pick cotton when I was 5, 6 years old.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I was in cotton fields. Yeah, to help my grandfather on the farm. And he used to take me to the gin mill with him. And at the gin mill, there was all white guy. And my grandfather was the only black. But they knew him, and they kind of like respected Bud Hills because he was like a rough, tough guy.
Wow.
Yeah, and my grandfather wanted to send my mother to Bethune-Cookman, to a black college. He wanted her to be a teacher.
Okay.
And just so happened she met my father. And I just don't understand the thing, because my father was like, we're a poor family. And from what I understand, I was like, well, how did you guys ever get together? I never got yeah, because he was afraid of my grandfather.
Yeah.
And come to find out, her sister helped him. But I was like, wow. Because when he married my mother, he was living on their property, living in the house. That's where he had all those kids at. And he was literally working for my grandfather, butchering, help with the planting the cotton. Because, my grandfather owned a lot of acres. Anything my grandfather needed to do, my father helped. And once he had all those kids, because actually my mother had 12 kids, but one of them died of miscarriage.
Oh.
So when he had 11 kids, we were all, because I was just a little kid, and I used to go on the farm. We were all out there on the farm, But that's what he did. He helped. And then in return, my father, gave him a salary. And also, we always had fresh milk and fresh meat and stuff. So it was a good thing.
So as a trade-off,
Good trade-off, yeah. Fresh food on the table. And we used to go out to the farm because Cottonport was about 10 miles from Bunkie. And it was cool. It was a good relationship between them. But my father worked pretty hard for what he was getting, so that was the relationship. But I knew what happened. There was a lot of things that happened to black farmers. Their farms were getting burned down, and they were getting run out because they didn't want them to own any land down there. Yeah, but my grandfather held on to his, so.
Is that farm still in the family?
No, part of it is. The house that I was born in the house by a midwife. But the house that my father lived in the land, that's all what's left. That's still in the family, yeah. It's a big house there. Yeah, there's always a little, but that's what we have left. That's our legacy, the house and that land. But all that other land, once my grandfather died, it was taken away from my grandmother by a big corporation. They have buildings. We tried to find out what happened. I was like, how did they, nobody knows. But it happened a lot. When my grandfather died, it was taken away from my grandmother, except for that land where she moved to in Bucky, and she stayed there. But anyway, yeah, it happened a lot down south in those days, But there's no record about where all that land went. And the question I have is, did you pay any money? But I don't remember my grandmother getting any money. No,
That's such a shame.
Well, yeah, that's just the way it was.
So you basically grew up there. What was it like growing up there?
It was a town of over about say 15,000 people, with about, I'll say 60%, 70% black, 30% white. It was separated by railroad track. A railroad track separated the black neighborhood from the white neighborhood. And you found, if you go down south, that's usually how neighborhoods in those times were separated. I went to Carver High School, which was segregated school naturally, which I love Carver. It turned out so many people. I mean, because at that time the teachers were preparing us, but the whole school boards was all white, and they couldn't teach anything like Black history, nothing like that. And the books we got were all raggedy books. The white school was across the track, and we would get their secondhand books stuff, and basically, they were suppressing us in a way. The plantations were passed down from slavery days. Say, for instance, you got back in slavery days, you got these plantation owners who owned all this property. As a matter of fact, that's how Bunkit was made. And when I was coming up, a lot of kids' fathers for generations lived on those plantations, and they couldn't go to school until after the crops were done. If school would start in June, they couldn't go to school until about July or August because the crops had to be done first for these plantation owners, because you still got shareholders. Even today, you still got people living on those plantations.
Wow.
And their kids, they don't want their kids to be educated because for generation to generation, that's been going on. And I could never understand that, like, and that's the way it was in our school. But our school was Carver High, named after George Washington Carver. We were the Eagles, and we, no matter how much they tried to suppress us, we had a great school. We had basketball, which I played, and we had bands and stuff like that. I was a drum major also.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. And we were Carver High School. All the black schools down that area was named after some black inventor, or Bethune-Cookman. I'm sure. I don't know if you heard of Bethune-Cookman.
Mm-hmm.
Heard her. But all the schools were named after that. But they were segregated, And that's just the way it was. Also on the railroad track, all the movie theaters, they had a couple of movie theaters, the Fox and the Bailey, which was across the track. We could go to the theaters, but we had to go upstairs. The white folks, that's where the candy and popcorn was, downstairs. But we couldn't go there. We had to go upstairs, which I'm sure they were sorry because guys would be throwing stuff downstairs. It was that kind of thing. But we had to. It was like that. Most of the stores was segregated. You had to be very careful, So, everything was across the track where the white, they owned all the businesses. You shopped over there, but you had to shop. Be very careful when you go over, You can't do certain things. Yeah.
So you could shop over there. Were there shops over on your side of the tracks, or everything was just over on
shops, not clothing shops. Well, yeah, a couple of grocery stores, but that was all we had over there. Maybe a liquor store, but all the other stuff was across the track. They owned everything: the movies, the furniture stores, the clothing stores, the pharmacists, all that stuff. They own that. And my mother worked. I don't know if you saw the movie The Help.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what my mother did. She worked for this white lady. Her husband was a doctor. She worked as a nurse, and my mother worked for her, Miss Marion, they call her. She had 2 kids that my mother raised, basically.
Wow.
But she worked 5 days a week. Yeah. So that's what she did. And in the meantime, my old man worked different jobs and stuff like that. And my sisters was mostly enjoyed at home trying to raise us. But that was crazy because I was always out in the streets, stuff like that. But that's how a family was basically run. Because my old man, he wasn't highly educated,
Well, with all the work he had to do, right?
Yeah, with 11 kids.
And being in a place where you are prevented from being educated, the oppression.
Yeah, but my mother was pretty strong. She was the matriarch of the family. And back in those days, mostly black women ran the families. And she kept me straight. But, my old man was, like I said, he worked hard, very hard to keep food on the table and stuff like that.
Yeah. So did you get to see your parents much while they were both working?
Oh, during the day? Well, I was at school usually. I was at school at night, yeah. But most of the times at night, I would. To be honest with you, we were pretty poor, and like I said, most of the time, my mother get home, she's tired. My old man get home, he's tired, and it wasn't like I got a chance to sit down and talk with them. It was nothing like that. On weekends, that was when we mostly got a chance to interact with mom and dad. Because my dad was pretty religious. That was when they make you go to church. You had to go to church on Sunday. Jeez.
Was that a full day thing?
About 3 hours, and for me. But all the kids were out there. All the people I know, we mostly belonged to the same church, because the church we belonged to, St. Paul, was started by slaves. They have graves out there, 1850. People were buried out there, the slaves. But it was a church that was started by former slaves, and my father, his people started that church, and they passed it down. He was a head deacon out there. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. By then they baptized. They didn't have those pools. I was baptized in the swamp.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
My gosh.
You know what a swamp is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was the pool. But it was an old church. It's still hanging on even now. That's where all my folks are buried. That's where everybody, you go and you look, you find Lewis's from way back buried there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But my mother realized that I didn't belong in banking. I was getting in trouble. She always told me, because I always had this thing. I wanted to, even though all this stuff was happening around me, I didn't bite. You wasn't going to tell me I wasn't better than anybody else, stuff like that. I knew that, it wasn't for me. I did things because I had to work too. We had to bring in money. I worked in a white barber shop, which was torture for me. But I worked in there. I was shining shoes and listened to all the jokes. It was like I wasn't there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it was bad. But I had to work, and my mother had got me that job because guys she worked for, they knew that Mama, all those kids, they needed money, so I would cut their yard, rake their leaves and stuff like that, get extra money, which was good.
Mm-hmm.
But I still couldn't go into the front door because I remember my mother was in the kitchen and I was working in that yard, and it was lunch and my mother was making sandwiches for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the mistake of going through the front door.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I never forget. I was going through the front door and I just got jumped by the father, the doctor. He made me turn around, go out. I had to turn around and told me never come to the front door. So I turned around, went to the back, and my mom was kind of like, she, what could she say? But yeah, that was one of the reasons that she was telling me that I just needed to leave Bunkie when I finished school. I had to get out of there.
And your mom, I can just imagine how painful that must have been for her to have to listen to some man
that she worked for
who wasn't your father, then talk to somebody that she loved so much. I mean, you love your kids so much. And that must have broken her heart. And at the same time, she had to be, like you said, the matriarch, this tough lady that had to go, look, son, that's the way it is. Don't go through the front door. Here's a sandwich. I can't go and correct this man as much as I want to.
And like I say, my mom she was the center of my life because I just owe her so much. So was my father, my dad, and I appreciate everything he did. I mean, everything. But my mom was it. But my sisters basically raised me in a sense. And I guess when I started getting a little older, like 16, they couldn't control me. I was like, I never listened to them, but they would just tell my mom, and I was kind of afraid of her, because I was running with some wrong people. I was running with some really bad people, and not for my mom, because most of those guys I was running with, they're in prison or they died. So my mom just wouldn't have it, and she straightened me out. And like I say, that's when I started playing ball and band and all that stuff. But she was always been the center of my life. She was such a good woman. She was always for the underdog, no matter what, and never complained, just like my old man. But she loved my father. I mean, she loved my father. And because my mom could have had a different life, because she wasn't poor. They had money. She was supposed to be she's supposed to be a teacher. Because all her friends, and I used to always wonder when I was going to school, all her teachers used to go, McKinley, they called me McKinley there, and McKinley, you better straighten out. I'm going to tell LED. That's my mother name. And come to find out, she was supposed to be going to teaching school with them, Bethune-Cookman with them. That's why all her friends were teachers, you know. They went, but she decided to marry my own man.
Wow. So she was pretty educated up to
Yeah,
that point,
yeah,
too.
yeah.
And did she continue to educate herself? Did she ever
No,
say
she
that she
continued to make sure
regretted?
her kids were educated. She was, yeah, my mom was an educated lady. But she was one of those people who believed in heavily in God. Everything was based on, you know, her belief in God, that things are going to be better, that God will make it better. And yeah, my mom was a totally educated woman, and she raised us to respect other people, but she didn't want people disrespecting her kids. She loved her children, you know, and she loved them very much.
Yeah.
And like I say, when I left home, I was so, because, you know, to go from Bunkie to boot camp in San Francisco when you've never left Louisiana, and to join a service where 99% of everybody is white, because the Coast Guard was the last bastion of whiteness in the military, because the Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and also the Army had been integrated. But the Coast Guard didn't start being integrated until late 60s, 70s. And the only reason they did was because at the presidential inauguration of John F. Kennedy, when all the academies marched by, the Coast Guard Academy marched by the president, and John F. Kennedy noticed there were no women or people of color at the Coast Guard Academy. He turned to the commandant and, where are your women? Where are your people of color? And that's when they opened it up.
Wow.
And most of the places I went, I was the only black guy, Afro American. That was the other thing I had to deal with, you know. Because it's funny, you come from a bunkie where you fought whites all your life, and then you join the military service where it's nothing but white, and you're going to boot camp. You know, when I got to Alameda at boot camp, I'm sure you know what boot camp is, right?
I think they call it basic combat training now, BCT.
Whatever, it's boot camp. It was bad then. It was 16 weeks, 4 months. And I get there, I'm the only black guy, and I'm in a company of about 60 white guys and me, and they need to pick a PL, a platoon leader. And guess who they picked?
Really?
Yes.
What was the
What happened?
criteria upon that they decided to
The
choose you as their
criteria,
platoon
the
leader?
criteria upon that, the DL, the chief who ran the company, the boot camp guy, to do all the screaming and hollering. You know, he's looking at all us lying there. He see me, I'm 6'3", and the criteria was this. He like, I run this company, I blah 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 blah. And he looks and he sees me, and I'm standing up there, and he says, "You, Lewis, come up here." I didn't know what he was doing. I came up. He goes, "Can you be a son of a bitch?" I was like, yes, sir." He goes, "Can you be a motherfucker?" Excuse my language. And I go,
That's fine.
"Yes, sir." And he goes, "This guy is running the company." And I was like a little shocked. You got 59 white guys from all over the country, because that was doing
Oh
now.
my
All
God.
from the south, from the north, from the east, and the west. So he picked me to run the company, and he picked 3 other guys to help me out. But they were like MAA, they were treasurer and this and that. But yeah, I was
And were you everything that he asked you to be?
even more. I was like, to be honest with you, I'm not just. But at first, because they had guys from the South there, guys from Mississippi, even guys from Louisiana there.
Mm-hmm.
Then a lot of people were trying to dodge Vietnam by joining the Coast Guard, and they thought that if they joined the Coast Guard, that they didn't have to worry about them. But they were from all over. But as soon as he jumped in, you know, Krause was his name, and he was from Brooklyn, New York, and it was something.
I can imagine that, you go into boot camp, and the whole point of boot camp is to make you so miserable that you break and eventually build up that camaraderie, build up that team experience with one another. But I can imagine that he probably said, you know what, there's one black guy here. I'm going to turn him into this big, giant son of a bitch, and he's going to be these guys' worst nightmare at that time. Yeah, so that probably did make it like really tough. Did you end up becoming friends with a lot of them eventually?
Yeah, I was. I had my own little crew. I'm not stupid. I was from the streets. I had my own little crew, and because being a PL, I had perks there, things I didn't have to do in boot camp. I didn't have to go to KP. I didn't have to carry a rifle. I still had to, go through the grinder, but I had my own little perks, and I had my own little crew, and they kept, which was about 4 other white guys who worked with me, and they told me what was happening about guys who wanted to kick my ass and would call me names like that.
Oh my God.
So we kind of, I kind of got that, and I got the respect of most of the company because I was a drum major in the band, and we had certain cadence. You know how you're marching, and you're singing, and you're doing certain things.
Yeah.
Every day before we went to chow, they had drill leaders, drill sergeants up on the corner, and you had to do something when you're marching by them, going to chow, that impressed them, while you're marching. And if you didn't, they would make you turn around, go back until you did something they liked. And then they would let you go and eat. And when you got 60 guys marching in cadence, I mean, they're teaching you discipline and also how to march. So I had a thing that we did in the band at Carver High School that everybody loved. And I taught it to the company. And here are these drill sergeants, along with my drill sergeant, Krause. He didn't even know because we had practiced it. And they're standing up there, and Krause standing up there along with those other drill sergeants. And they were always looking at me, these drill sergeants, because one guy tried to push me around. He tried to push his finger through my chest because he didn't think I should be a platoon leader. Krause got on his ass. But anyway, they were standing up there, and we were marching, and I called out this cadence, and we did it. It was so beautiful, and they did it. And I was looking at these drill sergeants, and I was looking at Krause. He had this big smile on his face, and these guys had never seen anything like that before. And they were like, oh, shit. And it was so good that we passed them. Stop that company. That's what the guy said. He goes, stop that company. We stopped. Boom. And he goes, get back here. Turned the company around, went back. And he goes, I want to see that again. That was so funny. He goes, I want to see that again. Do that again.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And it told them that, Krause, you did the right thing, So it was cool. Although when we got...
So you made a name for yourself.
Yeah, I made a name for myself. But even though when we graduated from boot camp, that was guys like, yeah, I'll be waiting outside the gate for you. That kind of shit.
Yeah.
But they were full of crap. They wasn't waiting for nobody. But like I say, I was product of the street. I mean, I knew how to fight, That was boot camp.
Like they say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, doesn't it?
Makes
But
you stronger.
Not the best way to learn those things. But I mean, it comes in handy. I know that, we all go through our various hard knocks. They're not exactly the same, but life's full of them. And sometimes you're not thankful for having been in a place where you had to learn that. But at the same time, you're like, thank God I know how to do this.
It's called survival, yeah.
Yeah. Thank God I know how to survive.
Yeah, and then atmosphere. So that was part of my bringing Bunkie.
Did you take a bus over from Bunkie?
I had never rode on a plane before. I took a bus to Alexandria and flew from Alexandria to San Francisco. That was my first time on a plane. Now, I had relatives, and my uncles and cousins lived in Oakland. They had moved from Bunkie. That was my mother's brothers.
So did you see your uncle and your cousins?
They were so happy. I went over there. I got Liberty on the weekend because I was really close to my uncle. He loved my mother, but I was really close to him. And on the weekend, I was in uniform. I went over to his house, and he was so happy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great to see him. All my cousins. Matter of fact, I'm still.
He must have been so proud to see you in that uniform.
Yeah,
too.
He was, and I used to go on weekends and stay with him until I got out of boot camp. It was great to see him because he was pretty close to my mother. They were really tight.
Wow. So how long had it been since you'd seen him?
Since I was about 7 or 8 years old.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So at least a good 10 years, 10, 11 years.
More than that, about 13 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I hadn't seen them. We had all grown up. And also his children who I used to play, because he used to come to Louisiana to see his father and grandmother. And his kids, who were the same age me, they were growing up too. And we connected. We still connect now. They're my cousins. They're my first cousins.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
So I had somebody there. And it was great to see him. And every chance I got him.
Having that kind of like a family lifeline connection where you're going rather than just getting sent somewhere where there's nobody there for you must have just made a huge difference. And what a huge break of luck, really, to be the PL, to be chosen to be the PL. I mean, your time there in boot camp could have
Yeah,
been
pretty
pretty
miserable, that's for
miserable.
sure.
You got just
Yep,
frontline
there you
pass.
go. Yeah, I've always, like I say, Kraus saw something in me, and by the time I got out, he was one of my greatest friends. He was so happy, for me. But he's from Brooklyn, and I used to talk to him, and he was raised in this integrated atmosphere in Brooklyn, New York. He had nothing against black people. I mean, he joined the Coast Guard, and he was, he stayed in. He was a chief. He was cool. And like I said, any trouble I got in, there was Kraus, ready to get me out.
That's a
Yeah.
good friend indeed.
So it was cool. And when I got a boot camp, he asked me where I wanted to go. Where do you want to go? I was like, Florida, Miami Beach. That was a big mistake.
Oh no,
Yeah,
why?
because in the 70s and 60s, Florida and Miami Beach was just as bad as Louisiana. Okay.
Oh no.
Liberty City, that was the only place we had to hang out. Ghetto, bad ghetto. But they discriminated just as much. But I wasn't there too long. They needed someone to go to Puerto Rico. They needed someone to go over there. And I volunteered to get out of the country. And that was the beginning of my career.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where I met Lolita. That's where I had Puerto Rico was the beginning. I went over to Puerto Rico and got stationed at the small Coast Guard station there in San Juan. San Juan, Puerto Rico. That's where I met John's mother. She was a Canadian girl traveling around the world with her friend, and we met. I was at a club. She worked in a bank. Her friend sung in this club. And there was a fight, and here she was run behind me. That's how I met her. There was a fight in there.
Oh my gosh.
She runs behind me, and I was like, okay, get behind me. So I met her and invited her to the base. Little did I know that Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico was so beautiful. They got all kinds of colors in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is not Louisiana. It's not Florida. It's beautiful. You don't have to worry about your color there. But on the base, it was a little bit different. Remember, no blacks on the base, mostly white. And I invited her to the base, and shit, man, that wasn't cool at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Don't make it a difference that this is Puerto Rico. Don't make it a difference that she's from Canada. All they see is a white girl with a black guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't stand that. And what happened is that on the base there was this guy. God, he just couldn't stand it, And we were in the galley eating one day. This is after Alita had gone, but he could see that I was going. And there was a Coke machine, and I got a Coke. And when I turned around, wham, somebody hit me. Cold cocked me. And that was him. That was him. He cold cocked me. It's a true story. Cold cocked me. I didn't fall. And I just went at him because I'm not going to let anybody hit me like that.
Right.
And the chiefs came out there. People, this is a military base. Came out there, and my lip had swollen up. And they asked what happened. And, they ain't going to do nothing. I told the guy, I told the chiefs, I go, you can put me in a brig, you can do whatever you want, but this is not over. This is not over. No way is this over. Which it wasn't. They took me and this guy to the captain of the base. He asked me what had happened. I told him. And I go, Captain, it's not over. I don't care what you do to me. It's not over. Because my lip by this time had swollen up. I'm bleeding. And the captain's, especially with this guy, with this big smile on his face. But anyway, the captain just said, okay, Lewis, Friday, I think it was a Tuesday, he goes, Friday, I'm going to go pick up some gloves. And basically, you and this guy, he says, I'm going to let you guys fight until one of you say stop. And I go, that's fine with me. And the other guy was like, yeah, it's fine with me. Because I knew I could kick his butt anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So come Friday, everybody at the base knew about this fight. It was like big time, And I was, my hero was Muhammad Ali, to be honest with you. I loved him. And the two Puerto Rican guys that was on base, they were working me out. Every evening I would go down in this little hole and they would work me out, We would box. That's what we would do.
Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yeah, that was Ali. Yeah, and because the guy was kind of big, but I knew I could beat him. And come Friday, everybody on the base, they made a big round, and we'd put on the gloves. The captain said, okay, go at it. And And this guy, you could beat him. He thought that just because he was big, all he'd do was hit me, and he didn't lay a glove on me, and I was like all over the place. I puffed up his face. I was just jabbing, and for a while there, I was like, I don't know. I feel sorry for this guy, and my Puerto Rican friends was like, come on, Walter, come on, end this, which I did. I hit him in the stomach. He went down. Then I threw a perfect right. He went down like a rock. Boom.
Wow.
And that was it. The captain came to me. He goes, "It's over now, Lewis?" I go, "Yeah, it's over. It's done." And his boys were all around him with this shocked look on their face. He's down. They wake him up. He starts crying. And I look at this pitiful white boy crying. And I thought about my mother. I thought, would she be proud of me for doing this? And I was like, no, she wouldn't. She wouldn't. And I reached down and helped him up. Yeah.
Wow. Sometimes you got to earn respect like that, don't you? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that it just speaks so much to the difference, this passage of time that we've gone through. And I know racism is still a thing.
I know.
But it just had so much of a bigger impact back then that Black Americans often found themselves having to fight for respect, and sometimes in very unfair fights. So it's amazing that, that wouldn't be my preferred method. I'm sure a lot of people would be.
I don't believe, please no, I don't believe in violence.
Right.
I don't, even though I wore one in there.
But you were so hurt. You were assaulted. You were betrayed of your sense of safety in a place where you should have been safe. You were mistreated by somebody who should have been one of your comrades. And so it's understandable, that level of frustration, that level of anger, that level of animosity that you get. And I'm really glad, that your captain saw that everybody else saw that.
It's really funny. He was white and he was from South Carolina. I was really surprised.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you're raised in a particular environment and it does not affect you. And I think that happens, and then of course, sometimes you're raised in it and it really does affect you. So I think that it's just, that contrast. And I'm glad that your mom was such a strong figure in your life and had instilled so many good values in you that you were able to just go, you know what, I'm going to give this guy my hand now and let him know that it's really over.
Yeah. Because I felt, and revenge, I didn't feel revenge. I felt like I did something I shouldn't do, shouldn't have done. I beat up this guy. I mean, I wanted to make him look bad, and I did, but I didn't feel any satisfaction. My friends did. My two friends, they're jumping up and down, going all crazy.
They probably thought you were the next Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. They were like, what's wrong? And I told them, but they were like, screw him, F him.
Yeah.
And I talked to my mom about it too. I called her and she was like, well, you did the right thing, But I detest violence in any form. And here I was, but it was something I had to do.
Right.
I told Lisa when she saw me.
Was she there?
No, she wasn't on base at the time. But when I got hit and my face was swollen up, I saw her that evening, and she was like, "What happened?" And it's so funny that a person of her color, she was white, she had no conception of what racism is. She couldn't understand why when we were together and we were on base and people were looking, I would get all like pissed or something. She's like, "You don't even know those people, so forget it,"
Right.
They're not doing anything but looking. But she had no conception of racism. Really. She didn't. She had no conception, which kind of ticked me off in a way, But she couldn't understand why I was getting mad.
She was from Canada, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because remember, a lot of slaves escaped up there from Canada. But I used to get a little ticked at. I used to try to explain to her. She got pregnant with Diana. That's when we got married because her friend wanted her to go back to Canada and have the baby. And I was like, wait a minute, it's my baby too.
Right.
She had to make a choice whether to stay or go back to Canada with her friend. And she stayed. and that was the beginning of my family.
Wow.
John, Diana.
So you got married in Puerto Rico?
Got married in Puerto Rico. I was just a seaman. I wasn't making much money. She was working the bank, and we had to find a place to stay in Santurce. And the Puerto Rican families, that they just so great. They kind of like adopted me because I was on a boat that went out to these islands, St. John, St. Croix, all these islands, and work. The Coast Guard were doing. But when I was out, their family used to watch out for Alita and the baby. They were so beautiful, so great to me.
Wow.
Yeah, they became part of my family because one of them lady was like, look, I know you can't afford an apartment, but I got this house in the back and it's really nice, and you and your wife can stay there, which we did.
How generous.
Yeah, they were so great. And that's where I went from Puerto Rico to the course school, hospital course school. But Puerto Rico, I'll always be honored for those people who really were so nice to me and took care of me.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my
Just
family.
really watching out for you.
Yeah, I was lucky on that. Yeah, but yeah, she got pregnant, and it was my responsibility. I didn't want her leaving. Matter of fact, when she didn't leave, we got married the next week.
You wanted to make sure she was going to stay.
Yeah, because that way she can get all the benefits too.
Right.
Of being a dependent.
That's true.
My military benefits. Diana was born in a military hospital. When I got out of hospital corps school, I got into helicopters, search and rescue and all that stuff. I was in Oregon. And I had told Alita that I didn't want Diana to be by herself, so I wanted to have a son. I was like, I want to have a son, really, just like that. And it so happened she has John. So, because I didn't want Diana to be alone.
It just seems like you've had so many strokes of luck throughout your life, right?
That's
you got to get into the Coast Guard like you wanted, and you get into the Coast Guard and you become the platoon leader, and you get from platoon leader to going over to Puerto Rico eventually and meeting Alita, and then you want a son and you get a son. That's really awesome. That's just beautiful.
And I got a career at the hospital corps school from Puerto Rico. I got into it even though the guy I worked for, the chief, didn't want me going. He didn't think I was smart enough to go to hospital corps school. But I did. Guys helped me too. Guys who were higher than him helped me. So I got my school. And
That's so awesome. So when you were in Puerto Rico, you were not flying helicopters at that time. What were you doing?
No, I just got in. I was a seaman then.
Oh, okay.
I was looking to see what career I was going in. Yeah. I was a seaman then. They put me on a buoy tender, a ship. It's called a buoy tender. You don't want to ever be on a buoy tender because they work from sun up to sundown. Doing the buoys, the buoys out in the harbor?
Yeah.
The Coast Guard's responsible for them, taking care of them and everything. We had to do the buoys in Puerto Rico. Then we had to do the buoys in St. Thomas and St. Croix harbor there. We went to St. John Islands and stuff like that. We did a lot of work in St. Thomas, St. Croix.
So with those buoys, are they just there to
tell the ships, to tell about shallow water or anything?
Okay.
Tell the ships to mark the channels.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the ships what channel they're supposed to be in. You need those. The Coast Guard is responsible for law enforcement. Also, they're responsible for aids to navigation, it's called. They're responsible for all aids to navigation. Even when you're out in the middle of the ocean, you hear those bell buoys. The Coast Guard is responsible for that. You would have to jump a buoy. They had those buoys out in the middle of the ocean. The ship would come and you would jump on this buoy and the ship would go. And you'd be on a buoy that's swinging in the middle of the ocean.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you would paint it because it had all that bird crap on it.
Yeah.
You would have to paint it red or black. You're out there all day with that buoy swinging, smelling paint. And the ship is gone.
In the hot sun.
Somewhere else. Yeah. And you're out there by yourself. And
oh my God.
Sharks. And it's something. You're just praying that they hurry and come back.
Did you ever see any very odd, crazy things out there in the middle of the ocean when you were out there by yourself?
A lot of times you see dolphins swimming around the buoy, jumping up, putting on the show. Schools of dolphins, because that's where you are. Or every once in a while you might see a shark, great white, swimming around.
Oh my God. That must have been scary because there's not a lot of space on those buoys, right?
Yeah, not a lot, but you're in a cage. It's not a lot, but you see great white, sometimes more than one. But you're out there all day, maybe for about 5-6 hours
On one buoy?
on one buoy.
Oh my gosh. There's got to be a better way,
But
right?
it takes about an hour to finish it. So you're out there for about 5 hours because the ship just can't come and pick you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're out there about 5-6 hours and you have a box lunch. That's about it.
And a lot of time to think.
Yeah, and get seasick. You only do that. The chief only put a guy out there. The chief that I worked for, he hated black people, but that's who you put out there. Somebody who you don't like,
Oh.
So that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was cool.
So how long did you do that for?
We were there for about 1.5 years before I got my orders for Corps School.
Oh, that's so exciting.
I had to go to Corps School in Great Lakes, Illinois. But what happened is that when I went to Great Lakes, Diana and Alita went to stay with her mother in Fort Saskatchewan because I couldn't afford to have them in Great Lakes and going to school there too. So they went to Fort Saskatchewan and lived with her mother until I got out of school, because once I got out of basic school, I had to go to the Coast Guard Academy Hospital for my internship, because the Coast Guard don't have doctors. They have us, corpsmen, like PAs. We have our own sick bay, our own stuff, but we get our ladder training from the Coast Guard Academy Hospital. I had to go there for almost a year. New London, Connecticut. General medicine, you work in surgery, you work in emergency room, you work on the wards, you work in...
So you learn it all.
Yeah, you learn it all. Coast Guard way.
You're the sole medical person, right?
Yeah, the Coast Guard way. You saw my sick bay there. The Coast Guard way. And after that, they send you out in the field after you graduate from there. The higher up in your class, the better assignment you're going to get. Like, actually, I wanted to go to Washington because Alita was in Canada, so it wouldn't be far. Mm-hmm. But they couldn't give me Washington. They said, hey, we have Astoria. That's the closest we can give you in Washington. Because I was one of the better students. So I got Astoria.
So you totally proved everybody that didn't believe in you wrong.
Yeah, because when I was walking off the ship, that chief told me that you're not going to get to the school. You're not smart.
But, he was probably projecting, because he probably didn't have the ability to do what you did. He probably wouldn't have made it through.
That's the truth, because he was like a deck. Yeah, he was a strong back, weak mind. You're right. He did. And I retired a higher rank than he did. Jesus, that's great.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah, but and I went to school, and my first assignment was Astoria. And that was really scary, because Astoria is at the air station there, a lot of SARs, search and rescue, especially rescues there, is really rough because of the Columbia River. It empties into the Pacific, and the waters there are really rough. We made a lot of rough SARs. And I remember my first rescue was rough. Two guys, it was bad. These two guys were on a cliff, and one guy slipped and fell, and he dragged the other guy with him down the cliff. And what they do, they landed on a beach that was really isolated. Good thing somebody saw him, because they called us. One of the guys had a compound fracture of his leg, and the other guy had a broken arm, and they were laying on this beach. And when we went out in the helo, we had to be very careful. We couldn't go hover with them to pick them up because of the cliff. The rotors would have hit the cliff. So what had happened is that I had to go into the water, and it was rough. The waves were smashing in and all the place. It was pretty rough. I had to go into the water, and with my med pack, swim to the beach. We had those air splints. Treat these guys, put them on my back, swim out to the helo where they lower the basket, and put them in there. And I had to swim back to the beach, do this surf. And the guy with the broken leg, the first time I put him on my back, we were in the water, and a big wave came and hit me.
Oh, no.
Bam, and knocked me back.
Oh.
With him on my back. And I told him to get up, and he's like, no, because he was scared, afraid.
Yep.
I can't make it. I was like, we can do this. Come on. He's like, no. I took the guy with the broken arm, put him on my back, took him out, put him in the basket, took him up. I went back to get this guy. And I was like, you coming? Or are you going to stay here? Because once the tide come in, you're going to drown. Don't you know that? Okay.
Wow. Got
him on my back, tied him down, and got him in there. That was my first rescue. It was so funny. When we got to the air station, the news were there. Astoria's a small town, but the news were there. The TV stations were there. And got them, unload them, and they talked to me. And that night I was on TV. I was kind of like really impressed. Wow, everybody had 50 minutes of fame.
I just think your whole entire story, I mean, up to here is just amazing. And I know that it just kept getting even more amazing. Like somebody coming
Yeah,
from Bunkie, Louisiana, where
yeah.
everybody has just completely thought that, just written you off. And look at all the stuff that
Right.
you've done. I love this.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. I know. It's like you go back. I go back there, and I don't want to say things, but I got my wings and everything, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But they love me. They put in a magazine, and at our high school reunion, they honored all the military. A lot of guys died in Vietnam. A lot of guys I knew, and a lot of guys in there. And I never knew my family felt that way. They had my picture, my uniform. I got it here, and beside it, it has HERO.
Wow.
And the things they said about me, I never knew that they felt that way. I know how my nieces and nephews felt, but I never knew how my brothers and sisters felt. Although my sister have a big picture of me in her front room, I just never knew that's how they felt.
I think all of us who have somebody in our family who's in the military is incredibly proud, of the things that that person has done, whether you've talked to them in recent times or it's been a long time, just the fact that somebody has gone through the process, because I think everybody knows boot camp is called boot camp for a reason. It's got a reputation as kind of a, really hard survivalist, extreme type of experience. And then to actually make it through something like that and go to school and become a medic, become a doctor, or, learn how to fly a helicopter. I mean, all of those things, it's impactful in a very positive way for families.
Yeah. And like I said, it's great to know that that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I don't talk about it a lot. They ask questions, but I just don't talk about a lot of things, and especially NAM, I don't talk about that a lot, which I do now. But because my brother, even before I was going over there, my brother's like, "You got to be careful. You got to be careful because I know you, because I was always crazy as a kid. I know you're gonna do something crazy." I was stationed in Guam. I went from Long Beach to Guam. They have a hospital coming there to Guam, a small little base there. And what happened was that the Navy requested a Coast Guard unit over in Cam Ranh Day and Vung Tau, because what had happened is that they were bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail because supplies were coming in on the Ho Chi Minh Trail from the north. And the only way that BC was getting in supplies was by water with junks. They were slipping in supplies. So the Coast Guard is used to boarding, search and rescue. That's what the Coast Guard do.
Right.
They were used to boarding, looking for drugs and stuff like that. So the Navy needed someone. So they took our unit and moved us to Vung Tau, home ported there. Last place I thought. We went to PI, file training, Philippines, Olongapo. And from there, went to home station in Vung Tau. And while they were doing boarding, I cooked up with the Rangers and the Marines. I would go into the village. They had a program called MedCamp program, where in the daytime we would go into the villages, set up, and I would treat the villagers, people who had never seen a doctor before in their life.
Wow.
It's just I would treat them, but you could only be in there at daytime, because at night the VC would move in. We would be there, and before the sun went down, we'd leave. And I would leave a lot of medical supplies there for the people, but VC would take it at night. And I used to take candy and vitamins and a lot of stuff to the kids because there was a lot of malnutrition and pneumonia. But that's what I did, yeah. Wow. It was part of a MedCap program, they call it.
Yeah.
We give, VC take. Didn't do any good because they would come at night and take over those villages. Vung Tau, Chulai, all of it, it was something. I lost two guys. We were going to one of the villages, and one of a friend of mine, guy who had been partnered with on RR in Thailand, Bangkok. We were in Thailand for a week, R&R. He got hit in the chest with AK-47. I couldn't do anything. It almost freaked me out totally. We had only been there for about a month.
Oh my God.
He got hit in the chest, and I was holding his hand when he died. His name was John Outlaw, and I couldn't do anything, and it freaked me out totally.
I'm sorry.
because I blamed myself. We were in the bush. We were going to the villages. Yeah, a sniper hit him. I couldn't do anything about it because hole was as big as my fist, straight through his chest, straight through his heart. That was all gone. And he died. I was holding his hand, and he died. And I got back to my sick bay. I locked the door, and I was crying, and nobody could come in. They were Doc, called Doc. Open the door. I didn't because I blamed myself. And what happened is that I was in Cameron Bay, and I was in a hospital, and they had to get one of the doctors from the hospital to come down and talk to me. He just pulled me aside, and he was like, "Look, you've been over here a week." He goes, "These guys depend on you. Tell me right now, are you going to be able to do this job? Are you going to be able to take care of these guys? Because if you're not, I have you back on a plane tomorrow, back going to the States. Tell me what you can do. Because you got to stop. You got guys to take care of." He goes, "It's not your fault. There's nothing you could do." And he goes, "Can you handle this job, Louis? Can you?" And I was like, yeah. Kind of straightened me out a little bit. Because I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to.
Wow.
And then we lost another guy with an IED. He stepped on it and blew it apart. But, yeah, I had only been over there a week. I don't know what he expected.
I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah, it was, I had to draw my gun. I wear a 45. See, medical people are not supposed to. We're supposed to be non-combatant, but VC, the Vietcong, Charlie, they didn't take black guys prisoner. They hated us for fighting. They could not understand why, because they knew what was going on in the States in the 70s. They knew exactly what was going on. Why we were over there fighting them when our people were getting lynched and discriminated against back in the States. That's why you didn't, when I first got over there, that was one of the first things one of those brothers, because we all stuck together where we took care of each other. The brother told me, don't be taken, because they torture.
What a dangerous time.
Yeah, every day. Yeah, it's pretty dangerous. But you can make a lot of money with it. Everybody had a hustle, selling drugs or selling copper, or selling money. Even as a corpsman, I could make all kinds of money selling tuberculosis syringes because the guys use that for heroin shootout.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing, right? A lot of our servicemen came back being addicted to drugs, being addicted to heroin.
Yeah, and they got them from the Vietnamese, from most of our vets. That was hell, man. Yeah.
And that was a year that you were there?
Yeah. But after that, they gave me wherever I wanted, and I went to Monterey. Alita wanted to go to Monterey. I went to Monterey.
Yeah,
Monterey,
it's beautiful there.
It's like, oh, yeah. Got stationed there, and I was making rank along the way. Once I made chief there, and they didn't have a lot of SARs, search and rescue. Every once in a while, they had somebody in their boat. I remember one of the SARs we pulled, there was one of the yachts going in a circle. So we went out, they dropped me on the boat, looked down in the Burton area. That was this guy laying down the stairs, and he was twisted. And I knew it had happened. He had fell. And it's pretty obvious his neck was broken. And it was just him. And I was like, good thing I knew how to stop a boat,
Right. How shocking, right?
Yeah, it's shocking.
Did it ever get easier after all of those search and rescues? Because I'm sure you came upon fatalities.
Yeah, lots of fatalities. Yeah, it never got easier. No, rescues, no. There's things that you never forget. Yeah. But also the people that you rescue that you'll never see again, but they hug you, tell you how much they appreciate you. Because let's face it, you're putting your life on line for people that you don't know.
So you were on the helicopter ones. You were the guy that went down the winch from the helicopter, right?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, and we used to do heart attack from cruise ships. I mean, we were going to do this rescue on cruise ship because the guy had a heart attack, and we had to pull off because people were out there taking pictures. Flash. All we saw was flashes.
Oh my God.
From the ship, cruise ship, and the pilot had to pull off. with over the bullhorn to stop it, because they couldn't see because the cruise ship was still moving. So was us. It was a moving rescue.
Wow.
But
I bet that happens all the time these days. So
yeah,
I could imagine
TV,
that.
yeah.
Do you know if there is a guidelines for cruise ships these days now that if it's a nighttime rescue that they tell the passengers?
Well, I'm sure
they're aware of that.
I'm sure they are, but I don't think that's a law.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the pilot says, "Hey, you got to stop," you stop.
Right, exactly. What was the wildest rescue that you ever did?
Wildest rescue I ever did it was in a storm. It was off the coast here, and these guys, there was like 3 people in a small boat. They should have never been out there, and it was bad. And I dropped down. I was put in the water, and the waves were all over the place. And I almost got taken under by the swells. To believe it or not, out in the middle of the ocean, those swells are so strong. And one of them was I guess a teenager. I got him first. And because he was with these other 2, and that was this guy who was floundering, and when I got the teenager, putting them in the basket, this adult grabbed me from behind and was taking me under.
That's terrifying.
Because he was freaking out. I had to actually use my elbow to
force him away.
Yeah, I didn't push him away. I cracked him with my elbow. He had a life jacket on, but because he took me under, and you know what happens when you swallow water.
Yeah.
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 And I was trying to get this kid up, and I got his wife in, and then him last. But that was one of the wildest rescues I did.
Wow.
In that thing off the coast of Oregon with the those 2 guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and I almost lost my legs on a fishing boat. They got a lot of fishing boats in that story. This one guy had a pump fall on his hand, and it literally just sliced on his right hand. His last 2 fingers were just hanging on. And we had to do a move and rescue. And what happened was the pilot was dropping me down. And just before I hit the deck, the boat pulled up.
Oh, God.
And I had my wetsuit on. And the screws in the back almost cut my legs off. Scratched my rescue. They hit my wetsuit. If I would have been up a little bit, they would have took my legs off.
Oh, my God.
And that shook me up. That's for sure.
Yeah. But
I got the guy, and I cut his fingers off. Put in some ice. And matter of fact, they got a chance to sew him back on. So you don't. If you get successful rescues, that's what you look at. But the wild ones and stuff they are all wild. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've lost up in Alaska. I've lost guys, friends of mine, guys that were in school with me, friends of mine. I've lost them from rescues, Bering Straits up in Alaska. That's the worst. I don't know if you looked at Endless Catch, but the Coast Guard do a lot of rescues. The Bering Straits is the worst ocean that you can have, other than Drake's Passage.
It's all ice moving through the water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Coasties die up there.
Did you ever do any rescues in that area?
They wanted me. I was on my Twilight tour, which is down in San Diego, my last 5 years. They needed a chief up there, and they asked me if I wanted to go up there, and I told them, no way. I only about 3 years to go.
Good for you,
Yeah.
Now, speaking of really cold places, you got to go to Antarctica, right?
Yeah, 3 times. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, that's the cool place. Antarctica, as you know, is the coldest place on Earth. And I was on an icebreaker, the Glacier. I was the corpsman. I was sick bay on the icebreaker. Had 2 other corpsmen with me, but I was the main doc there. And we take scientists to the Antarctic because the Antarctic is the only neutral site in the world. All people have signed treaties. Mostly all countries have stations there. Ours is called Parma Station, and we would take supplies to the scientists there, and we would basically change the scientists. They're up there for a year or 2. We would take them, make a change, go across Drake's Passage, take them to Punta Arenas in Chile. That's where they used to catch the plane. Dump them there, get supplies, go back across to the ice. And we had to cross the roughest ocean in the world. Look it up. It's called Drake's Passage, discovered by Sir Francis Drake. It's where the Atlantic and the Pacific meet. It's rough for 2 days. All you do is you're in the rack. There's no hot food because the ship is rocking. The waves are up to, you're talking about 15, 20-foot waves, maybe higher than that. But Drake's Passage is 2 days. You're rocking and rolling, trying to get across there. And once you hit the ice, it's okay because it's smooth. But it's a mess. 2 days. And we're up in sick bay because guys are getting cut. Guys are in engine room getting burned. It's a 2 days of hell for us.
Yeah, this says here, June 18th, 2015 is the last stats that they have. At that time, there were 20,000 sailors had lost their lives there, and its waters hold more than 800 shipwrecks.
Yeah, that's Drake Passage, all right. But good thing we were on the Glacier. We were first ship to take women to the Antarctic, and she was on the helm. You know what a helm is? That's there in the ship.
Mm-hmm.
She should have never been on there. And the ship took a big 50-foot roll, and she let go, and she slammed into the iron bulkhead, broke just about every bone in her body.
Oh my goodness!
We had to turn around and go back to Wellington because she almost died. And we had to use the helicopter to fly her into Wellington because she was that bad. She was pretty tough, but it was bad. And we got her back to Wellington.
It's amazing.
But Drake's Passage, yeah. It's rough.
So you crossed that 3 times.
3 times, yeah. I was only supposed to be on the ship 2 years, but I was in the twilight too. Like I said, I was going to retire. And I wanted to retire in San Diego, and I always wanted to come down here to this air station.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me that because they were going to decommission that ship, if I was to stay on there an extra year, they would give me San Diego.
Oh.
So it was worth it to me. Plus, look at all the ports you pull into. That's one of the reasons I want to be on an icebreaker. Look where we go. We pull into Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, Tasmania, South America, Hawaii. We take our training in Hawaii. That's south when you go south. You stop there. We stop in Chile. It's a tour, a world tour. I love Fiji. We stop Fiji. And we have friends in New Zealand. When we pull into New Zealand and Australia, it's just so funny. They're used to seeing the glacier there around Christmas time. When we pull in Australia, they have all kinds of people waiting there on the pier for us. All kinds of people.
Wow, the welcome committee.
Yeah, and they invite us to their homes and Christmas and everything. And we pull into Sydney. So if you want to see the world, get on an icebreaker. But you got to spend time up in the Antarctica. It's beautiful up there, but it's, like I said, it's the coldest place on Earth.
Yeah.
We used to play football on the ice. Because in the Antarctic, there's no polar bear. It's only penguins and killer whales. When you break the ice, the killer whales will be following the ship for breaking the ice, and the penguins will be scattering, and the killer whales will just jump up on the ice and slide and get the penguins. It's like watching something on the National Geographic, but killer whales would follow the ship, and we would stop, and you could go down, but you had to worry about whiteouts. When you hear the horn go off, a whiteout is like when you see in the desert and you see a sandstone coming.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way it was in Antarctica. The weather could change in a second, and you look and there's a whiteout, and you don't want to get caught in a whiteout because you would just freeze to death.
Yeah, okay, so it's like a blizzard. Is it a blizzard?
Yeah, it's like a blizzard. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
You see it moving, and they sound the horn, run back to the ship, and then it would hit. You can't see anything in front of you.
How long would they last?
They would last for about 30, 40 minutes.
Is it just the wind picking up the snow like the wind does with the sand?
It's the wind, and also the temperature is going to drop more. That's why you freeze it up. In the Antarctic, you got to remember, put your arm in the water, and in 30 seconds, your arm would freeze off, basically. And we went to McMurdo, the Navy base that's in the Antarctic, that was found by Admiral Byrd. And also, right there, they have a place that's frozen in time of the people. This guy from New Zealand who were trying to reach the South Pole, he didn't do it, but his camp is frozen in time right there.
Wow.
These are these old-time explorers who were trying to reach the South Pole, but they died, and it's just frozen in time right there. It's like a museum.
Was it Sir Robert Scott?
That's Scott.
Yes.
Yeah. Sir Robert Scott.
I read a lot.
Yeah,
and I remember reading about his expedition, and it just broke my heart because they went out and they should have reached that South Pole, but there was a huge storm that came through. His party,
probably a whiteout hit him.
It was probably a whiteout, and he wrote a letter knowing that he was going to die. He wrote a letter to his wife, because he had a little boy. And in that letter, he penned to her, please be practical. Do not mourn my death. I want you to get married again. I want you to marry a man who will be a good father to the child. And we'll teach him how to, we'll teach him things that men need to know, ride a bicycle, how to fish, how to do this, how to do that. And, of course, I love you and all of that, but I will not be returning. And he didn't. And that letter is, I believe it's in the Smithsonian. It's been a while since I read it.
Yeah. And his whole thing is just frozen in time, right in McMurray.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's just right there. You can walk. It's just frozen.
Yeah.
Everything, how he left Scott. That's the guy.
Yeah, Sir Robert
it's something.
Scott.
It's part of history that I never thought I would see. But
no,
it's right there.
That is such a tragedy. And I think that about 3 or 4 months later, I don't think it was more than 6 months later, I think it was America was the first to reach the South Pole.
Yeah, along with an Afro-American. Palmer. He was with, I was an Afro-American with this guy that reached the South Pole. Yeah. I got a chance to go there. I dropped there with the helo. They had to take some supplies to this station. It's a pole and it's South Pole. So I went there. I used to have a shirt. I bought a t-shirt and a towel. I don't know what happened to him. But we dropped off there. One of the pilots was like, hey, Doc, you want to go? I go, yeah. And we went.
I don't think a lot of people have the honor of saying that. So I think that's really amazing. What I came up with is George W. Gibbs Jr. served on Admiral Richard Byrd's third expedition to the South Pole in
He's an Afro-American, right?
1939 to 41, becoming the first African-American to reach the South Pole. Yep.
Is Gibbs? Okay.
Gibbs, George W. Gibbs Jr.
So we've been there too.
Yeah, 1941.
Okay.
That's awesome. There's a great picture here. I'll put it in the show notes.
McMurray was discovered by Admiral Byrd. He was the one who put that base. Richard Byrd. I don't know if his name is Richard, but he was one, and it's still there. Yeah.
Yep, Richard Byrd.
Yeah. So it's there, and we take them supplies too, because it's ice. The ice is thick, and it's an icebreaker. We drop them off supply, and also, like I say, the scientists. It's interesting the scientists we take up there because they tell us what they're doing. They get grants from the government, and also the Glacier is the U.S. presence because you can't have nuclear ships in the Antarctic. That's part of the treaty. Right. No nukes in the Antarctic. And also, for the first time, this is true, we chart places. One day they piped over this pipe system that we're in a place that's never been charted before. We charted a place that no one had ever been to before.
Really?
And they go, if you want to see this, come up,
That's amazing.
We are now in an uncharted place.
Yeah. How many people have ever been in uncharted territory?
I know.
It's almost like every single place on this planet, at least every land-bound place, right, has been charted. Right. So
charted, as far as I'm concerned. So I was happy when they piped that.
Wow.
So I go up, everybody goes up, and it's just ice. That's all you see, white. I mean, it's not like you see aliens or something. You go up and you're like, oh, okay. All you see is ice. It's like, it's never been charted before? Yeah, you're charting it. So, okay, all right, whatever.
Amazing.
But I thought that was kind of neat. I'm a big Star Trek fan. To go where no one has boldly go.
Yeah, go boldly. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a big Star Trek fan too, so I love that.
Yeah, it was cool, but it's just ice, and we up there, and it's really weird that you go outside 12 o'clock at night and the sun is beaming down on you because remember it's 6 months of daylight, 6 months of darkness. You can't be up there. Darkness because the ship cannot break the ice then. They get stuck in the ice. And it messes around with your sleeping habit.
I can imagine. So when you're down there, Are you not staying on the ship? Are you staying
Now
in the camps?
yeah, well, you got your cold weather clothes on and everything with Bonnie boots and stuff like that, and you can go with the scientists. They discovered bones of an emperor penguin, which is an emperor penguin is big, tall.
Mm-hmm.
They found that, but no, you don't have to. You could go with them, and also what they do is that they have a day. It's called Boxing Day, where the ship is up on the ice. They bring out the barbecue pits, bring out everything, and you can go on the ice. That's how we're playing football out there. They having hamburgers and hot dogs. And also, it's a tradition. You can challenge anybody on the ship to box that day.
Oh, it's
called
actually
Boxing Day. Yeah.
I'm thinking gift boxes.
Nah, it's called Boxing Day. It's a tradition you do in the ice every year. You can challenge anybody. They don't have to take you. So I couldn't believe one of the guys asked me, "I want to box you, Doc." Like, get out of my face.
Get the heck out of here.
Because I had to be there to make sure nobody got killed.
Right.
But and we have boxings, and it's fun. You get hamburgers, hot dogs, play football. I threw 5 touchdown passes that day.
Oh wow,
It's
nice.
on the ice. You can see it, but it's great. It's a great day. So it's like a play day on the ice, and I was like, only we could do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's just a fun day. And then you got to remember, you have also, when you go into the Antarctica, you got to cross the equator, and you got to have the initiation also. You go across the equator, you got to be initiated. They're called tadpoles, and you become...
Yeah, those are not fun, right? They dump all the yucky food and everything on you. And
yeah, the first year I didn't go across. I wasn't going through it. Everybody's supposed to go through it. I was like, you're not going to do that to me, that's for sure. But they give you a card that I still have. I went through it the second year through it. But yeah, they mess you up. But that year we had the women on that. That was third year. They had about 25 women. Put feathers on them.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a mess. That'd be nice for you to go through, Sil. I mean, you would go through
it. I'm not crossing the equator with you ever. You'll throw something at me.
Nah, I wasn't too hard on guys. I mean, I just put some hot sauce and ketchup in the thing, and when they came through, I would have them open their mouth and I would shoot it in their mouth.
Oh gosh, yuck. But, so does each person do something different?
No, you have people dress up as pirates because this started back in the pirate days. The crew who's been through it are the ones who put people through it. They wake you up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh God.
They put you back in the back, and they have set up all these things for you to go through. Yeah, it's rough.
Did you guys pause somewhere along the equator?
Yeah, in the middle of the ocean. Well, going across the equator, they used to stop and have swim call out in the middle of the ocean. That's why you got to be a strong swimmer.
Yeah,
because they have the gunner's mate sitting up there with the rifle for the shark. But those tide can take you away because out in the middle of the ocean, it's so strong. I jumped out there and I didn't realize how strong it was. Yeah, we paused for that. Also, we had basketball team on the ship. I coached the basketball team. 3 days before we pulled into Fiji, we got a radio transmission from the American Embassy in Fiji saying, do we have a basketball team? And we were like, yeah, we got a team. And they were saying that the Fijian wanted to play us basketball. Oh I didn't realize how big that was going to be when we got to Fiji. The captain said, come down. Yeah, chief, they want to play ball. And yeah. So everything was ready. We pull into Fiji. And that night, they come and tell us the place that we're playing the game is in the national. It's like playing in Staples Center.
Oh, my gosh.
It's where the Olympic team play. What? We didn't know it that big. And they send limousines to pick us up.
Oh, my gosh. That's so cool.
And we're like, wait a minute. And I'm beginning to think this was a big thing to them. Fijians are small, okay? Because I'm thinking we're going to kill these guys. Because that's just me. I play ball. I ball, So we get in the limousines. We go to this nice gymnasium. We see all these people outside. We get out of the limousines. We have our uniforms. We got Glacier uniforms. These people are clapping like we're the Harlem Globetrotters.
Oh, my gosh.
And we go into the door, to the gym. The place is packed. The mayor is there. The governor is there. The captain is there. You know, the city council is there. It's packed with people. And I'm thinking, like, well, who they think we are? You know, it's like, but as far as they're concerned, we're the Harlem Globetrotters because we're an American basketball team. And as you know, everybody in America can play basketball. They watch the NBA, you know. So I'm thinking, man, well, we got to take these guys. We get out there. These Fijian, their team, small. They had no guys bigger than about 5'8". We had guys that were 6'4", you know. But what I didn't realize is that a Fijian could hit a cat's eye at 100 yards. So they didn't have to come in and get any rebounds because all their shoots from outside, they never missed.
Oh my gosh.
They were killing us. And the gym was going, wow. And we came back a little bit, but they beat us. They beat us about 15 points.
Wow.
Really. They beat us. And I was totally pissed. You know, I was like, in the mirror, and they cut. I didn't like to lose. I was pissed. And the guys shook their hands, and we were everything. Then they took us to reception. We had food, and they treated us like kings, you know. And Catherine was like, he was all cool, you know. Well, you guys lost, no big deal. I'll go, yeah, it is a big deal.
If you're a ball player, it is a big deal. You guys got ambushed.
He can talk all he wants. Yeah, got ambushed by a Fiji national team. What really ticked me off, the next day I was downtown Fiji, and all their papers are in English. I pick up the Fijian paper. This is their national paper.
Uh-huh.
And you know what the headlines was? Fijians sink sailors.
Oh my God.
And they had this big headlines, Fijians sink sailors, and they had the score there, and they had the whole thing written up. I couldn't believe it. I was sick.
Shade.
I took the paper. Yeah, I know. I took the paper and I took it back to the ship, and everybody was like cracking up. And I was like, okay, we're gonna be here next year.
That hurts.
Try that. Yeah, but they
Did you get to re-challenge them?
Yeah, the next year I was ready. I was. They still beat us, not as bad.
Oh,
yeah,
my gosh!
We came back, but they beat us. But no,
I know there's some Coast Guard ship out there that's listening that's going to be going to Fiji. You guys got to win one for the Americans.
Yeah, I know. But it was fun, but they still beat us. But they were such beautiful people. That's why I wouldn't mind going back to Fiji. I love Fiji. I love the food, the people. That's the first place I went where everybody's black.
Really?
I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, Fijians. They have this nice hair. They're all dark skinned. But everywhere we went, they did treat us. Because we were in New Zealand, and they treat us like kings too. But they play softball, and our ship played them softball. Well, they got killed by it.
Oh no!
But afterward, yeah, they're not big in soft. Get a soccer ball out there, they'll kill you.
Yeah, but, rugby, right?
Rugby and soccer. I met some of those guys too. But anyway, after the game, they had food and everything. You got to sing. All of them sung a song, and after they got through singing, they were like, "Well, now you guys sing." You know, we were like, "What?" And the guys were all shy, and they're like, "Well, sing what?" You know, and the New Zealanders go, "Well, we love your national anthem. Aren't you singing the national anthem?"
Oh,
and that's what we sung, the national anthem, and they just loved it.
Oh,
they loved the words in our national anthem.
Wow!
And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." They basically loved it. They go, "Yeah, they're beautiful words."
You know, that generosity of spirit of having another country say, "Hey, you know what we want to hear is your anthem."
Yeah, that made us. I thought that was a little unusual.
Yeah.
New Zealanders are crazy about America.
So you've been to so many places, and then you did end up in San Diego, right where you wanted to be, right?
Yes, my twilight tour. Last 5 years, I had been in 23, so you can stay in 30, but after 28 years, I was like, oh, it's time to go. And plus, I had maxed out on my range.
Wow.
It was time to go. I was done after 28 years and all those things, and it was quite an honor. Yeah, and like I say, if I could do it all over again, I would.
That's awesome. I just love that story. If you could go back and say something to that little boy from Bunkie, what would you say?
I would say basically to that little boy that I was, is like, stay strong, stay hopeful, and never, ever let anyone, no human being ever tell you that you can't do something or you can't be someone. Never let anybody tell you that things are impossible for you because of who you are. You can do anything. You can be anything. That's what I'll tell them.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have these stories out there. If somebody tells you that you cannot do something, that you're not smart enough, because it's all in you, right?
Yeah, right. Check it out. We have a high school reunions. We have them every 2 years for our school to keep our school alive. Because once they integrated the schools back there, they closed Carver because they didn't want white people going to a school named Carver. So they built a whole new school, and now it's integrated. But we, Carver alumni, keep Carver alive. Every 2 years, we go back to Bunkie, and for 3 days, it's party time. We honor Carver. We have a parade. It's a big thing.
Wow.
The first Super Bowl, Lionel Ulrich from Carver played with the Green Bay Packers in the first Super Bowl. Carver. Guys who went to the Carver. I wrote Carver's name, my family name, and Carver High School name in the ice in the Antarctica. I wrote it down there. I carried that banner. And it's so funny, when they were, 2 years ago, they honored all the people who joined the military. And they had people standing up like, we want to honor everyone here who's in the military. And they had the Army guys stand up, which just about everybody went in the Army. And then the Air Force guys, everybody goes in the Air Force. They had a few Marines and a few Navy guys. And then they called Coast Guard. And I was sitting with my classmate. And you know how many guys stood up? One. Me.
Wow.
I was like, wow. And it's so funny what some of the people said, especially my classmates who knew me. They go, that's just like McKinley. You're always going to be different.
Very cool. I love that they know who you are. They knew your spirit.
Yeah, they go, that's him. That's who he is.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, that's me. But yeah, but we keep Carver alive, that way, because it's in us. But I owe it a lot. And I owe it a lot to my teachers, too, who cared a lot about what we used to do. Because I know you used to tell me all the time, better stop screwing around, McKinley, because you're going out to a world that you know nothing about. And they were right.
What a full and awe-inspiring life. Walter is a hero. I hope that this story has inspired you to believe in yourself and follow your dreams. As always, I'll post links in the show notes. Please continue to send me your questions and suggestions. I love hearing from you. And don't forget to take a moment to rate this episode. It only takes seconds, but your rating moves this podcast closer to the top of searches so that my friends and I can reach more people. I'm looking forward to sharing more in the Company of Friends talks with you. So be sure to follow me on the socials and the .com, all at The Queen Trail Podcast. That's TheQuainTrelle Podcast. I am Zealnd, the Queen Trail, and until next time, I wish you passion, grace, adventure, confidence, courage, peace, elegance, and beauty.